Welcome! I'm Protector 6, Emperor of the Prozone Empire, and I decided to start a new video series called Imperial Excursions. This first excursion is at Sharpsburg, Maryland, where we're going to the battle site of Antietam for the Civil War. You might be asking why? Well, it's inspired because I sort of rekindled my interest in the American Civil War. My location where I live is very good to visit these Civil War battlefields, a number of them. And I've been playing a lot of Ultimate General Civil War, and I've been stuck at the Battle of Antietam. So it all felt perfect for this first excursion. Now, a lot of this video is going to be clips of me talking about what I know about the battle and the battlefield while walking around showing video. Now, it's not going to probably be 100% correct because I'm not a historian. But I think it's educational to a point and give you a good idea of what's going on. Gives you a little other side, show a little other side of me other than the gaming and the K-pop on my streams on Twitch. So I hope you enjoy it. So we're going to start with a little background. So basically this is the first time Robert E. Lee of the Army of Northern Virginia of the Confederate States of America has decided to march north of Virginia, try to take the war to the Union, on the Union side. So he has recently gone over the Potomac River. They just had the Battle of South Mountain a couple days ago. And now, on September 17th, 1862, they're at Sharpsburg, Maryland. So as you see in the map in front of me, it actually shows sort of the entire progression of the battle. If you look north, you see the arrows from Hooker, General Hooker. That starts the day off. And then he attacks Confederate forces under General Jackson at Dunker Church. They call it Chapel in this, but Dunker Church. Dunker Chapel. So that's the first phase of the battle. I'll go more into it later. And then second phase ends up, you see General Sumner to the northeast. He attacks near Sunken Road. That's the second phase of the battle. And then all the way down southeast, I guess pretty much east on this map, you see the name Burnside. General Burnside then attacks what they would call known as Lower Bridge. It would end up being called Burnside Bridge after the battle. And that is the third phase of the battle. It's three phases. Starts at dawn, ends late afternoon, dusk. Cornfields, half a mile that way. A lot of fighting occurred in the morning. For there's Mama's farm. Straight ahead. Upper Bridge, South Mountain, 6 miles that way, which battle occurred before. Roulette Farm. Cry House, 1.6 miles that way. Was used as a hospital after the battle. And then a quarter mile this way, Sunken Road. Very close. So some Confederates defended in the morning after the cornfield. And then 1.75 miles this way is Burnside Bridge, which the fighting was late in the day, the afternoon, near the conclusion of the battle. Sharpsburg itself is a mile that way. Alright, welcome. This is the site of the Battle of Antietam. We're at you could say, the focal point where the battle began. This is where General Hooker, who led the first assault, I guess on the Union right, the Confederate left, to begin the battle before dawn, actually. Staged himself at Joseph Poffenberger's farm, which was his HQ. And we're actually at the north edge of the North Woods, as the sign says. Back then, this was cornfields, completely. So he sent out his army, his divisions to the south at nighttime, before even dawn, where they would eventually hit the Confederates in the morning, and this would begin the Battle of Antietam. which would end up being a battle that lasted till mid to late afternoon. See, this is the cornfield trail. Walk it. Maybe. So you see, they would go through this grass area to the cornfield, where some of the bloodiest, not the bloodiest, but a lot of bloody combat occurred in the morning. So imagine we're General Hooker's troops. It's dark, it's not even dawn, and we're walking across this field to get to the cornfields, to get the Dunker Church, to drive the rebels off the field. So now at the Sharpsburg, at the Battle of Antietam historical site, they have created a trail for you to walk through, sort of reenacting the Union troops would do, but instead of, this curving path, they would in fact just march straight ahead. And here we're about to hit some of the cornfield. But imagine, so it's pretty orderly right now, but the cornfield was very high, very bushy, you could say. See that? But imagine full stalks. That's just what you're seeing. So you come out field, and this is all field, and that's just corn. I don't know if you can see Dunker Church from here, but now starting to go in that cornfield, start getting a Confederate artillery hitting you while you're marching up. And the cornfield was crazy. You could not see a step in front of you. So it was very chaotic, free-for-all warfare that was occurring in these cornfields. So we're actually right outside the cornfield, and over here you can see some of the Union battery that would be firing upon Confederate forces in the cornfield and at Dunker Church. As you can see, we are right outside the cornfield. Man, we have marched all the way from the previous point I showed you at the farm through this field, and now we're at the dreaded cornfield. All right, as I mentioned before, we are now at the dreaded cornfield. So it wasn't just General Hooker who brought troops to attack from the north, it was also General Mansfield. And what we're about to walk through is some of the 3 hours of horrific warfare in this battle. Like, no joke, this and Bloody Lane at the Sunken Road that we're going to see in a little bit had perhaps the fiercest fighting in this battle. This is why this is the single most bloodiest day in the Civil War. We'll tally the numbers later, but here we are, the cornfield. As I said before, very low visibility. You could only see right in front of you. Look at this corn. It was even higher back then, but it's like higher than me. You can't see. And so you'd have cannon fire, boom, everywhere. You wouldn't be able to see the enemy soldiers till you're right on them, that sort of thing. So it was crazy. And then over, you can't see it, but we're at north end, so imagine southeast, there's the Eastwood. And on Eastwood, we had General Sumner, and he was bringing divisions from the Eastwood that they would actually cut west, just south of the cornfields. But now we're going to go into the cornfields, and you can imagine the chaos that would ensue for the next 3 hours of bloody warfare. Here we are. Look at that corn. Imagine having to march through this. Cannon fire everywhere. The bodies. You can't see. Imagine if you're walking in this corn. You think you could see through it? No. You know how difficult it is to walk through it? And you gotta do this. And this is back in, by the time of the battle, this was 24 acres of corn. 24 acres. So it's not just 24 acres straight, but total. But you can imagine why it would be complete chaos, sort of free-for-all fighting in the 3 hours that there was fighting in this cornfield. If you watch Gods and Generals, the extended edition, they showcase that, the chaos of soldiers fighting in this cornfield. That's like the only thing Gods and Generals covered in this Battle of Antietam in their movie, the extended edition. It's not in the normal theatrical edition though. Not sure if it's 100% in this new Civil War game called War of Rights. It's sort of like Battle of Verdun. It's supposed to be a very realistic shooter. And they have a battle where you just go in the middle of cornfields. I'm not sure if they specifically said it was the Battle of Antietam, but if it wasn't, it was definitely inspired by the Battle of Antietam. So we just got through the cornfield. And what would also happen, so a lot of cornfield fighting happened after this initial wave. So what did happen is the Union soldiers came out of this cornfield. You see those little pickets right there? And then at that point, Confederates who were lying on the ground over here stood up, launched a volley, and took out quite a few soldiers. And they did that a couple of times before the Union pushed back. And I suppose some of the Confederates pushed up. And that was what occurred for the cornfield fighting. I'm not 100% sure, but that's the sense I'm getting. But you can't see it, but because there's too many trees. But back at the time, there weren't many trees. You would be able to see Dunker Church. So you see that little monument? That's where the visitor center is, and to the east, to the west over there a little, would be Dunker Church. So you would actually be able to see where you were then going to attack. And then over here was the Westwoods, and Sumner, who was the Corps commander, would send Sedgwick and his brigades in a column formation to. So luckily we have these sheets, which are very informative. So Hooker first came in the cornfield at the Ave, which is not here back then. Hoods repelled him, and actually Lee ordered D.H. Hill to go into the cornfield, where they went to northern ends and they got demolished by Union batteries, which we saw earlier. And so that's where the back and forth in the cornfield occurred. Interesting. But then Manfields, as I mentioned before, arrived, and then they drove back in the cornfield, drove back Hood's men from the Sunken Road back across the cornfield to start pushing them down towards Dunker Church. So that's the go-to was about for the cornfield battle. I mean, cornfield portion of the battle. So, as we mentioned about the cornfield battle, so because of Mansfield's assistance, the Rebs are being pushed back south to Dunker Hill. And at this point, Sumner has Sedgwick bring his troops in column, which is a marching formation. It is not for combat. And with Hooker and Mansfield going south, there's sort of like they got put. There's Union troops to the south of Dunker Hill, Dunker Church, and to the north, where Sedgwick goes. Sedgwick comes. He's like a funnel, as said by the park ranger. And when he gets there, I don't know if you can see it, but over there are woods. That's the Westwoods. And at the Westwoods, you had some rebel Confederate troops there. And it was a surprise for both the rebels and the Union soldiers. And so then they start to engage in battle. All right, so an update about this whole Sedgwick and how his battalions were completely annihilated. So as I mentioned, they were in a column formation. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but they went from the Eastwoods all the way, which was like northeast of Dunker Chapel on this map, and they cut west to Dunker Chapel. So at this time, you have Union troops a little, it sounds like a little south of the chapel, and you have Union troops north. You don't really see any rebels in the area. So they think they're in mop-up role. So General Sumner's actually with Sedgwick, and he has them in column formation, which is marching. It's like 4 abreast men marching in long line. And so they go up to the chapel. So what I didn't know earlier was that there's a number of rebel brigades, Confederate brigades, in the West Woods. They're just forming up, and they're sort of reserves. Like, they're coming, a lot of them, some of them are coming from Harper's Ferry. They're just entering the battlefield. They're not supposed to be engaged. And with how the Westwoods are, there's all these little gullies, stream gullies. So the Union troops, when they get the woods, they don't see them because they're in these gullies which are below. You know, they're not level ground. And so it sort of comes as a surprise. But the way the gullies work, though, is that the way the gullies formed is allows the Confederates to hit this column. Say this is the column. Allows the Confederate forces to go like boom, 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 and hit them right in the middle in their flank. So you're like, wait, what? Why is it flank? Because they're in the column. So in the column, they're facing this way. 4 men apiece facing that way. They're facing this way. So when the Confederates hit from the south, it is the flank. The flank is like this long. But it is the flank because the Union forces are facing that way. And so they're hitting them in the flank. That's the flank. And then to their west, you have Confederate artillery hitting them. And actually, because the column end right at near the chapel, these rebel artillery to the south, near where the visitor center is, let's say near where Gordon's position is approximately, probably a little east, a little closer Sunken Road. They're hitting them with artillery there, hitting the columns to the rear. And so Sedgwick's battalions get destroyed. They get almost completely annihilated. It's a way they're getting tracked from 3 different directions. So that was an interesting tidbit I found out later about why Sedgwick's battalions were crushed and why they weren't able to find the rebel forces until they were right on them and how the rebel forces were able to flank them. So there is your update. Okay. This is Mama Farm, and to the south there is Roulette Farms. So I was talking about the assault by Sumner through Hedwick and Hooker and Mansfield. Well, after that, Sumner sent French and Richardson to attack from the east. So they went through these fields to these farms. So we're east of Sharpsburg and Dunkerchurch. And they were going from here, they went south and then west, where they actually then encountered Confederate troops hiding in wait at Sunken Road, which actually became known as Bloody Lanes. So you look at it, this was the cornfield of Westwoods. See, French and Richardson would go through these 2 farms. We're going to hit Sunken Road. And then later we're going to do the lower bridge with Burnside Bridge. But yeah, so this is the farm. So, know why it's called Sunken Road? See how it sinks? There's the observation tower. This is why it's called Sunken Road. Will forever be known as the Bloody Lane. Because for 3 hours, some of the heaviest fighting occurred on this stretch of land. Only 2,200 Confederates defended it. They were reinforced later, but they were able to hold off attacks of a combined 10,000 Union troops. But eventually they had to push back towards this way to the Piper Farms, but the Union could not advance because they suffered too many casualties. But you can see why it's called Sunken Road. It literally sinks down. This is where the Confederates defended against the Union attack for multiple hours. Hence why I come Bloody Lane. And actually there's a picture of all these dead on a road. That was here. This is actually the picture of the dead at the Bloody Lane. So we're walking in the Sunken Road right here. The Confederates defended all of this area. They defended way down there where that road is, up here till near the observation tower. And Richardson, first it was French, who attacked straight on. You see the hill right there in these cornfields? That was French. And he hit the Confederates here under hill, not AP Hill, another hill, for an entire hour. Both sides are tired. And actually Hill's divisions and Axe regiments had actually fought on South Mountain a couple days ago, and they had to almost single-handedly hold some positions. So they're very undermanned. And then Richardson comes with a fresh troops, and they come over to the observation tower and they sort of flank. And see, they got the flanking down in the Sunken Road. And you can understand why the Confederates end up pushing back. They actually scattered. So they're no longer an effective fighting force. Hill was able to rally 500 men near Piper Farm down this way, but basically they're ineffective. But French is already tired out, and then Richard's mortally wounded before he can get troops, additional reinforcements and artillery, so he can smash through Hill and take Sharpsburg and then cut off the Confederate forces. But sadly, he was mortally wounded, so the orders were never completed, and this area, Sunken Road, Piper Farm, becomes a no man's land. And that is why the battle ends up shifting to a Burnside Bridge, because the only fresh troops that have not engaged today are down southeast to Sharpsburg and southeast of this point. Well, actually from this point it's more south, but that is why. And then we're going to go in the tower. You'll get to see sort of the topography of the land, why it was so hard to see. Until you get to the top of this field, you would not be able to see the troops hiding here. Like even here, we can't see down there. And that shows you why the Union troops were sort of surprised, caught off guard, and why it's called Sunken Road. They couldn't see the Confederates until they were very close. And then firefight.
I know Bragg is because I go past there all the time. But you got about 12,000 some Federals against 400 to 500 Confederates. And their job was to hold them back as long as they could from going across the bridge, and that's what they did. About 3 hours, a couple charges. And then finally the 51st Pennsylvania, 51st New York finally made it across the bridge.
Here we are at the lower bridge, since now known as Burnside Bridge. This is where the final segment of the battle began. General Burnside is on that shore, bringing Union troops, trying to bring Union troops over this bridge to go west. Over there is Sharpsburg. Now, up there, you see that little tent? Up there, those people, there are about 400 to 500 Georgians up there defending this bridge, trying to hold off the Union forces for as long as possible, delay them. And obviously, as we found out later, it's so A.P. Hill can enter the field and hold off Union forces and be able to flank the Confederate right flank. So they defend this for a couple hours. They only get pushed off by superior forces, and in fact they were running out of ammunition. But that is some good ground up there, firing on this bridge. Union troops were not trying to ford this. They were trying to go across the bridge. They ended up lining up on those fences and firing back until they felt a lull, and then they charged over this bridge and drove Confederates back, which will lead us to the last portion, the final portion of this battle. But as you can see, that is a hell of fire coming down. It's a rain of fire across this bridge. You see, you're not fording that river. So, only way is this bridge up from fire up there. So Burnside took a while to get across this bridge, but across it he did. And then the fate of the battle, how should I put it? It's in the balance. It's on the tipping point for the Union, because there's now a battered center that's out of commission. The rest of the troops in the center and left, basically no man's land, sort of like static. And if he pushes through, he can hit the right flank and destroy the Confederate army, take Sharpsburg, block off Lee from getting back to Potomac and ending the war. So Burnside Bridge, can you believe crossing this bridge under, can you see it? Heavy gunfire up there. I can't. Look how narrow this is. Sitting ducks. Ducks on the pond. It's insane. Having to charge through this. We managed to because there's only 500 men. They were low ammunition. There was troops on the Union troops coming from the downstream that were going to pressure them, so they didn't want to get hit. So they were running low on ammunition, so they retreated. But that's insane. I would hated to have to try to march across this under a hail of gunfire. Yes, over there. I don't know if you can see it or not. Oh, nope. It's sort of over there by those trees. You saw in a previous clip, but it's up there. So you can see how difficult it would have been to march across this. Alright, so imagine in front of you, Burnside troops are coming up. They have now crossed that bridge. They're pushing up. But then, suddenly, and right in front of you is Lee's line. And Burnside's troops are pushing them back. Pushing them back. They look like they have perfect route to Sharpsburg, approximately ahead of us. And then the rest of the Confederate troops are that area, their right flank. But, lo and behold, as Burnside, and we are now marching this way to go to Sharpsburg, engage the rest of the Confederate Army, bam, A.P. Hill, rushing back from Harper's Ferry, where they just took. Boom, he comes up to the left side and he hits Burnside's flank right here. There's Burnside's left flank. And it causes the confusion in the Union lines, and eventually A.P. Hill is able to drive the Union all the way back to the creek. And hence, as darkness falls, the battle is ended. And the conclusion is a draw. Burnside got all the way up here, maybe a little farther, got driven all the way back. So, at the end of the day, it was a draw. And you could say even the Union got the better end of this draw. Could even say it was a victory of sorts. The reason is, my arm's tired. The reason is that was enough of a victory that it prevented the European countries from acknowledging the Confederacy. It allowed Abraham Lincoln to decide on the Emancipation Proclamation, the one where he's freeing slaves in the South in Confederate states. But at the same time, the Union got the short end of the stick because there was two instances in this battle that they could have won. They could have taken Sharpsburg, annihilated Lee's army because they would have been between Lee and the Potomac River to get back to Virginia, and he would have lost. They could have annihilated Lee's army of Northern Virginia. The war would be ended because Richmond would have been undefended. Those 2 points were at Sunken Road. If Richardson had not been mortally wounded, he saw, and his troops were fresh enough, that they could crush the rest of the center of the Confederates and then hit Sharpsburg and basically hit the rest of the Confederate left and center from the rear. That would have probably ended the battle, ended the war. Second moment was Burnside. If Burnside had been able to get across this bridge, Burnside Bridge, and advance to Sharpsburg and hit the Confederate right earlier before A.P. Hill got here, the battle probably would have ended. Lee would probably surrender. War's probably over. So, interesting thoughts to think about the Battle of Antietam. It was a very fascinating battlefield to go to. I actually, in some ways, preferred it over Gettysburg. And yeah, I think I'll do a little side right now to go over that. Gettysburg's great, but it's very touristy. When it felt almost impersonal. Like you could do your own tour. or you can take a bus auto tour, but you didn't really stop at all the places and get the ticket in. If you did, it's just so big of a battlefield. But a lot of times, like, oh, so like, yeah, so Confederate soldiers were in these fields and they marched out. I'm like, okay, but there were so many monuments, and I'm not saying Antietam didn't have monuments, they did, but they didn't, felt like me, they didn't have enough paths, like trails, make you feel like you were walking the footsteps of the soldiers. Antietam, not as touristy. Small visitor center. Mission's a lot cheaper. But they have all these trails, and you're gonna see me go on one of those trails. I didn't have enough time to go on all of them, and it was so crazy because you could feel like you were there. So as you'll see in the video, I walked through the cornfield, the bloody cornfield that a lot of people will see. Have you seen in clips like Gods and Generals extended version? You know, these cornfields. I walked through that. I walked in the Sunken Road, which became known as the Bloody Lane, where there was some of the fiercest fighting during this battle. And if see, there's a picture. I'll show it in the video later. There's a picture. A photographer took a picture of all these dead bodies on the road. That was the Sunken Road. I was on that road in that photograph, and so it just like really was mind-boggling that it was almost like an unreal experience going to Antietam because you were literally walking through, and it felt like you were walking through where these soldiers fought and marched and died. It was just such a different experience than Gettysburg, and I think that's why I enjoyed it more. It was more gritty, and it really made me think a lot more. Well, this is all for this Imperial excursion. I hope you enjoyed the Battle of Antietam tour with the Prozone Empire.
Quoi, ça te dérange pas?